As Korea's only international broadcaster, Arirang TV has been at the forefront of public diplomacy for the last 20 years.
All things grace.
Ranging from K-pop to breaking news out of the peninsula, Arirang has become a household name with an outreach of 120 million households in over 100 countries worldwide. He is the diplomat of diplomats. Ban Ki-moon, 10 years as the Secretary General of the United Nations and another 37 as a diplomat for South Korea. Meet this man with half a century of diplomatic career under his belt. As Arirang TV celebrates 20 years of international broadcasting as a media diplomat, we couldn't think of a better person to seek advice on what it's like to represent this country. Hi, Mr. Secretary General. It's so nice to see you.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you for coming. Arirang TV and Ban Ki-moon on decades of representing the Republic of Korea. So, two-term UN Secretary General and currently the chair of the National Council on Climate Change and Air Quality, Your Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, thank you so much for being here as we celebrate our 20 years of international broadcasting.
It's a great pleasure to be here. It's a privilege for me.
Oh, I'm honored.
To congratulate and to join with you on the occasion of 20th anniversary of Arirang TV. Congratulations.
Thank you. Many, many thanks to you. So you're the diplomat of diplomats. We probably couldn't even dare to describe you, your career, maybe even your life, without mentioning your critical role in the realm of diplomacy. Arirang TV, of course, we've also strived to be at the forefront of public diplomacy through our role as an international broadcaster. I must say, many of us here at Arirang have very fond memories with you. What's your impression of Arirang TV?
Arirang TV during last 2 decades has been playing a very important role. Of course, representing a Korean perspective, but not only Korean perspectives on what is happening inside Korea or outside around the world, but you have been making news swiftly, accurately, but at the same time, what is more important is to deliver with analytical views or sort of a perspective of the views, how you can understand the situation, what is going on. In that regard, I really hope that the Arirang TV will continue to propagate around the world, raising the awareness, first of all, on the perspective of Korean culture, history, and her people, and her policies, diplomatic policies.
Right, it's always something that we're contemplating on. But speaking of diplomacy, we cannot but mention your 10 years, a decade of being the Secretary General of the United Nations. So it wasn't an easy task, but we managed to compile your 10 years in under 3 minutes. So let's take a look first.
Okay.
Foreign Minister Ban Ki-moon will be running for the top job at the United Nations.
Foreign Minister Ban Ki-moon will take over as the new United Nations Secretary General.
The Secretary General designate His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon.
We're about to witness a historic moment at the United Nations.
Right now, this is perhaps one of the best news in Korean history, Korea's history, modern history.
Solemnly swear.
Solemnly swear. We can build a more peaceful, more prosperous, and more just world for our succeeding generations.
Ban Ki-moon says meeting President John F. Kennedy at the White House as a student inspired him to take the path of a professional diplomat.
Ban Ki-moon was the first UN Secretary General to visit Antarctica and see the icebergs melt before his very eyes. The temperature rises in Antarctica 7 times faster than the global average.
I'd like to send out a strong message to the international community. My message is that we must act now. I think the sincerity and honesty and transparency are very important elements in conducting diplomacy.
예, 잘 지냈습니다. 감기무량합니다. 이렇게 뵈서. 예.
반갑습니다.
네. 들어가시죠.
I always start every day as if this is the first day as a Secretary General of the United Nations. That really gives me much stronger motivation. That's my strong commitment.
Thank you very much for sharing your precious thought and time for our Arirang TV audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Look beyond your boundary. Try to be a global citizen. This world is going through a great transition, and try to adapt to this changing situation.
So that's just the tip of the iceberg of what you've been doing for the last 10 years or so. There must be a million things that's running through your mind.
Just viewing this 2-minute brief videos reminds me of many busy hours I spent 10 years at the United Nations. And one observation is that there was time when myself was looking much youthful, much more youthful.
Oh, you look youthful enough right now
I
as
wish
well.
I were as youthful as I was 10, 15 years ago. In any way, it's very insightful for our viewers to understand what my life was and what United Nations was doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. We just briefly touched upon this, but not only were you the first South Korean Secretary General of the United Nations, you've achieved so many firsts while you were in office, and one of which includes us, Arirang TV. Like you said, during your second term, we launched our 24-hour channel on the UN in-house network at the headquarters in New York. That was back in 2015, and I remember being very excited, feeling a little bit more responsible as we were showcased to the rest of the world through our channel at the UN. So you were, of course, the top diplomat of diplomats, but also as a South Korean Secretary General, how did you feel back in 2015?
Of course, I feel very much proud and pleased that Arirang TV was able to establish a United Nations in-house network working in parallel with the global media networks like CNN International, BBC World, Al Jazeera, and many more. There were only 20, I remember. Then Arirang TV has become one of the global networks propagating news around the world, not only Korean people. So now what I am expecting as a former Secretary General, as you are celebrating such a very auspicious occasion of 20th anniversary, I think you should aim more and higher and wider, reaching out to the people around the world. Every corner of the world, people are waiting to know what is exactly happening elsewhere. This is the very important mission and responsibility of global responsibility. As 5 decades long serving public servant, I feel there is a very close, important relationship between public service and media. Any leaders, or whether government or political business leaders or civil society leaders, cannot do properly their work without help of media. So media is sort of a connector between the community and other community, between the people and other people and among the people, This is a very important responsibility the media network, any media network should feel. Yeah.
Now, I ask you this with caution. So how is Arirang received in the UN community? It's been 4 years since we've been an in-house channel.
It's very useful to know more about the Korean perspective, as the Koreans' visibility and strength has been going on much higher than before. It's even different from when I took over my job in 2007. By the time I left the United Nations 2016, there's a much wider scope and wider understanding, much more appreciation on not only Korean politics and economic development, but also culture and their people. This is a very important advancement of Korean views around the world. Look at how all these Korean rock stars are doing.
Yes, K-pop.
Yeah, K-pop.
Right.
K-pop boys group, BTS.
BTS.
And also golfers and athletes around the world. So we should be very proud that there is a much more appreciation, much more understanding, much wider sphere where Koreans are now extending their work of activities here.
Well, so now that you've mentioned on your days at the UN, what would you say you are most proud of? I mean, just the top of my head, I can remember the historic Paris Climate Accord. There was the 2030 Sustainable Goals and the establishment of UN Women. I mean, what are you most proud of?
I think you have already explained what I was going to say. I can say exactly what you said. 3 areas I have devoted all my time and energy and passion to make sure that there is nobody in this world whose human rights and whose human dignity would be violated, not respected. Not respected because of what they are. There is a serious problem of human rights and dignity when it comes to gender equality still. So gender empowerment was one of my top priorities when it comes to human dignity. So that's why in 2010, I established the United Nations Women. This is a huge super agency dealing with what is all about the women. Then I also, for the first time, established the special envoy of the Secretary General on youth.
On youth.
On youth in 2011. So I appointed a very young, that time Jordanian man, Mohammed Al-Hendawi, as my special envoy to make sure that there is empowerment for youth. Then if we combine all women and all youth under the age of 24, it becomes 75% of global population.
Oh, wow.
So that means this world is half of the world is women, and again, more than half of the world is young people.
Right,
And
so
therefore,
the
it is only natural.
Right, 3/4 of the entire population.
Yes, it is only natural that world leaders should do much more to empower women and youth. At the same time, I thought that without addressing climate phenomena, then there would be no hope, not only for humankind, but also our planet Earth. And I've been speaking out that there is no time to wait. We have to do all what we can, because there is no planet B.
Right.
So there is no plan B, except we do much more to make sure that we will be living harmoniously with nature. That is what I was able to help adopt agreement of a Paris Climate Change Agreement in December 2015. I am still very much concerned about the level of implementation The world leaders are not united. They are not doing much on addressing the climate phenomenon.
I have to throw you this question. Were you sorry to see U.S. leave the Paris Climate Change Accord?
I am deeply concerned. Even I felt anger when President Trump decided to withdraw from this Paris Climate Change Agreement. This Paris Climate Change Agreement was the work of all the leaders, political leaders, business leaders, and civil society leaders all around the world. They became one. Only with this, we were able to help adopt this Paris Climate Change Agreement. The speed of negotiation has been almost very slow, very slow. It took at least from 2005 when the Kyoto Protocol became effective, it took exactly 10 years. Since the days when Kyoto Protocol was negotiated and discussed in 1992, it took 25 years. I am proud that during my time, during 9 years, after 9 years during my time, this was adopted. And then United States is one of the largest greenhouse gas emitting countries, number 2, next to China. And United States is the leader of this world, a most resourceful country. And then they should be the champion. It was only possible because China, number 1, the greenhouse gas emitting country, and the United States were united, and they were leading this campaign. And I was one of the world leaders who've been really working very hard to make sure that this agreement was adopted. I am urging, taking this opportunity to the United States to return to Paris Agreement as soon as possible. What President Trump was saying is, first of all, scientifically wrong and economically irresponsible and politically short-sighted. So I hope that the U.S. will return to this
to
agreement.
The climate change
Yes,
agreement,
yes.
absolutely. So over those the 2 terms, like you said, there are many difficult challenges because there are so many heads of state, because there are so many leaders. I'm sure you've had to meet or deal with hundreds and hundreds of states of heads, prime ministers, presidents. In my perspective, one of the busiest times for you would be the UN General Assembly week. Could you share with us, now that you're retired, could you share with us one of the most interesting, difficult episodes that you've had to deal with during UN General Assembly week?
Every year, late September until first week of October, as you said, General Assembly is convened where average more than 150 or 60 heads of state and government are coming to participate. That means kings, presidents, prime ministers, and foreign ministers, and some other ministers. It's the most challenging period, the 2 weeks for me as a Secretary General, because everybody, almost everybody wants to have a meeting with me.
Right.
And then for me, I think I can tell you that at least 15 to 20 bilateral meetings I had to have with the world leaders. But it's not only bilateral meetings. I have to attend the General Assembly. I have also attended the Security Council. Many side events are taking place around that time. And there are many lunches and dinners. What is interesting, I can just summarize in an interesting story that one day I made the 13 speeches a day, 1 breakfast at my residence, but 3 lunches and 4 dinners.
Oh, wow.
But that means I had only 1 breakfast because you cannot have 3 lunches or 4 dinners. But I had to move constantly during
Right.
limited 1.5 an hour.
Right.
3 lunches, making 3 speeches and moving to another place for dinner. Then in between, I have to meet a lot of world leaders. This sort of speed dating.
Speed dating.
Speed dating. So this is the most difficult period. But I felt very proud that I have been really trying to resolve all the global issues, be they political, or economic, or human rights issues, or regional issues, refugee issues, and so many things. I could enrich myself in terms of my capacity to handle the problems, and also I was able to understand the perspectives of all different countries, what their challenges were exactly. It was very helpful. So I can't tell you clearly that I'm sure that there should be nobody who had met so many world leaders as I have done. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gangnam Style.
I stand proudly before you today to share my personal experience in witnessing the power sport has.
We have learned to love ourselves. So now I urge you to speak yourself.
Now, over those 2 terms in office, I'm sure you've also felt the Korean image or the nation, Korea as a nation, received differently over the years. How did the status of Korea change over your decade-long term in office?
When I was first assumed my job, to my mind, people seemed to regard me as a person who came from a small country, but relatively well-to-do, economically developed country, Korea. But they knew about the Korean history. They knew that Korea made a huge surge in economic and social development from the ruins of Korean War. So for that, there was deep appreciation, admiration even, about my role as a Secretary General. And then, during my time, soon began with the decline of the global economy, starting from the Wall Street. At the same time, there was a much more interconnectedness between and among the people and countries, with a much faster development of science and technology. So we became effectively one planet family. That was good things. In the meantime, Korea's role and perspectives and recognition by the international community of Korea was hugely expanded. First of all, we became the member of G20, and there are many Korean citizens, men and women, both, in sports, in music. During my time, Psy and his mega hit Gangnam Style went viral.
Yes.
And he even came to my office.
He did.
The number of journalists covering his coming to see me was much more than for those global leaders. And I even practiced his Gangnam Style, like
horseback riding, yes.
Horse riding Gangnam Style it became viral again.
It went viral,
Yeah, went
yes.
viral
Yes.
around the world. And I soon became, because of him, much more famous.
Really?
I was a sort of a famous person, but because of him, the late BTS.
Right.
Look at what kind of appreciation and welcome, excitement the BTS is now rousing around the world. And BTS even spoke at the United Nations.
They did,
It was
yes.
huge as UNICEF ambassador. That was hugely proud, and I think we should fully encourage those young people, artists, sports, and musicians, and whatever professions they may be. Let them expand their scope of activities around the world. I think this will be very helpful for not only the global prestige of Koreans, but appreciation and admiration on the part of what we are doing.
Absolutely. So, away from the traditional framework of diplomacy, but these K-pop stars, sports stars, they can play as a, people diplomacy, as a diplomat representing Korea. And Arirang TV, we would like to play a big role in basically relaying their message and their performances to the rest of the world and become that bridge. Now, you talked about a lot of your passion, but of course, it's mainly on climate change. And like you said, your speech that we have no plan B because we don't have a planet B really struck with me as well. And now you continue your role or your passion on climate change as you take up a new role on the National Council on Climate Change and Air Quality. What does your new role entail? What do you do as a chair of that body?
Having assumed the new position as a chairman of a National Council on climate and air quality, it really humbles me. Knowing that somehow, unfortunately, a particulate matter, PM 2.5 phenomena has become one of the most serious environmental catastrophe for Korea. Of course, it's not only Korea, but around the world. According to WHO, almost 80% of global population are suffering from bad air quality. But when it comes to the countries like Korea, well-to-do countries, members of OECD, then I think Korea should have done much, much better. Our target is, at present, on 2 stages. First proposal will be presented to the nation and reported to President Moon Jae-in at around the end of September or at the latest the first part of October.
This year.
I'm planning to address all the issues, including the sources of all these emissions and particulate matters. And those involves at least 60,000 industrial sites or cars running with diesels and outdated cars. And there are many areas. At the same time, each and every citizen, they should also change their behavioral patterns in their own living, private livings.
In our daily lives.
Yeah, daily life. This is what I'm going to do. And next year, around that time, same time, I'm going to present mid and longer term proposal, a package of proposals, including all the issues which we will debate. Yeah.
We'll be following up on that particular session very closely, I guarantee you. Now, I want to go back to your your remarks about how the entire globe has become smaller now with the advancement of high-tech IT and whatnot. And, like the case of Find Us, it requires concerted efforts by the international community. And that's where you play a critical role because, you've been a mediator of 93 plus countries and maybe hundreds of different opinions. As a veteran diplomat, what would you identify as the most effective type of diplomacy these days?
The global coordination, global leadership is very important. Look at the particular matter. Of course, we have to do what we need to do. But it may not be possible to address these issues completely without the help and cooperation of neighboring countries, so including China, Mongolia, Russia, and North Korea, and Japan. So this is something which we need to work cooperatively with the participation of 6 Northeast Asian countries. And the particular matter is like a global issue because of its nature of long-range transboundary, pollutants. So it crosses over the borders. So we have to work very closely. So we are in the process of working very closely with Chinese authorities. I met President Xi Jinping and also met twice Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, not to mention Environment Minister Li Ganjie, and many local leaders. As a Secretary General, I've been always emphasizing the importance of global solidarity, global citizenship, global vision. So without working in a global solidarity, global coordination, nothing can be done.
Now, because you mentioned it, I cannot pass up on this opportunity as a journalist. I need to ask you this. You spoke of global unity, global cooperation, diplomacy on a multilateral level. At this time, we have trade row with Japan. Now, as a former Secretary General and a career diplomat of 50 years, what kind of advice do you have for the situation?
It is very unfortunate. I'm very much concerned that 2 close neighbors are now at the confrontational stage over past history issues, as well as, I think it started all from past history issues. My advice at this time is that there is no other way but to resolve this through diplomatic negotiation. I've been always advising the world leaders, particularly the neighboring countries when they have sort of some conflict, difference of opinions. You may have freedom of choosing your friends or even your spouse, but you don't have any choice when it comes to geographically neighboring countries. You have to live harmoniously.
Right.
So between Korea and Japan, unfortunately, we had suffered such a tragic period under Japanese colonization. Now, the leaders, successive leaders in the past up to now, have agreed on the basic formula or basic way forward, is that looking squarely at the past history,
right,
but to move forward for a future-oriented way.
Relationship, absolutely.
Future-oriented way. And this is what Korean and the Japanese leaders should keep in mind and address this issue as soon as possible through open-minded negotiation. Yeah. I'm not going into detail because it is so complicated.
Right, it's complicated. So moving forward, as we wrap up this one-on-one with you, Mr. Pan Ki-moon and Arirang TV, me representing Arirang TV, as a career diplomat and expert in diplomacy, how would you like to see Arirang TV move forward as a international broadcaster carrying out the role of public diplomacy?
Now you are almost the sole English language global network delivering news and perspectives in English. So your responsibility will be even more important. As I said, with the transformative development of science and technology of 21st century, we have become a very effectively one global family in a global planet. The national boundaries may not be much more meaningful at this time. In fact, there is no such national borders. It has always been crossed over by all this communication.
Right.
Therefore, I sincerely hope that Arirang TV will continue to work as global media diplomat, working together with the government and the people to make sure that our perspectives are properly and swiftly delivered to the people around the world. At the same time, conveying the messages and perspectives of the world's people to the people of Korea. I think that is your very important, noble responsibilities. Yeah.
And we'll do our best to carry out that mandate. Now, as we celebrate 20 years of international broadcasting here at Arirang TV, we'd like to ask you for a message to our viewers and Arirang TV. If you can just look at the camera and give us a message, that would be very much appreciated.
Well, first of all, my warmest congratulations to all the viewers and staff of Arirang TV. Warmest congratulations again on the occasion of 20th anniversary. There is a saying in Korean language, 10 years may be enough for even mountains and rivers to change shape. Now, you have already seen mountains and rivers change shape twice.
Right.
Now, you may have to work for many more mountains and many more rivers change shape in the future with the soul and very concrete commitment and mind that what you are doing is for global. And it is very important that you foster global citizenship, global visions to the people around the world, including the people of Korea. And congratulations again.
Thank you so much. Two-term UN Secretary General, now currently the chair of the National Council on Climate Change and Air Quality, and many more titles you hold. But I'd like to address you as Mr. Climate, as you've been nicknamed during your term as a Secretary General. And we root for you in carrying out your task, your agenda for climate change and for this planet. Thank you so much for coming to our studio and congratulating us for this 20th year anniversary. Many thanks to you again.
Thank you again for this opportunity. I'd like to call Arirang TV Global Media Diplomat.
Thank you. And you're the diplomat of diplomats, so we'll take that with modesty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. 감사합니다.
감사합니다.